Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Lynn and today I am going to craft with the Spellbinders Autumn of Wonder collection. But first, I'm going to make some papers that I can die cut from. This is a Kaleidacolor ink pad. Really fun. It's actually 5 separate ink pads that are on this sliding mechanism, and there's a thumb notch that you can actually use to push the 5 individual ink pads together, and when you're done, pull them apart. So when they're together like this, they are right up against each other, and that allows you to do what I'm doing here, which is to kind of swipe and create my own custom paper. And the reason why I'm doing this on my scoreboard is because that little thumb notch that lets you kind of push the ink pads together or pull them apart, it's actually raised higher than the ink pads. So if you want to swipe and you want that last ink pad, the ink pad that's closest to that thumb notch to actually be able to touch your paper, you need to kind of raise it, like swipe it where your paper's lifted a little bit so that that thumb notch can actually dip down below the paper. And then when you're done, you just pull that thumb notch again to separate the ink pads. And that way they aren't just touching each other all the time and having the inks kind of bleed one into the other. So I love that. It was so fast to create that ombre. Another way that you can create your own ombre papers is to just do some direct to paper kind of inking. And I love the Versamagic ink. Look how creamy and smooth this is. It's got a very nice kind of milky, chalky finish. And what I like to do is just smush down a little bit of extra ink right on the border so that I can use that extra ink to pull into the color next to it. I don't like to smush my ink pads right into the adjacent color because then you can kind of cross-contaminate your colors, and especially if you're trying to blend two very different colors like the yellow into the red, you definitely don't want to cross-contaminate. Maybe, the pink and the red, they're close enough, and just a little bit of that pink getting into the red ink pad wouldn't be terrible, but I prefer to just do these individual blocks and then use a blending brush to smooth out the ombre or the transition in between those two colors. And if I feel like I need to get a smoother blend, then all I do is just add a little bit of extra ink right at the border, but not kind of crossing over. So for example, here I wasn't getting a smooth blend, so I just added a little bit of the dark green, a little bit of the light green, so that it's nice kind of, and this is a pigment ink, so it's going to sit on top of your paper and it'll need a little bit of time to dry, but that ink right as it's coming off of the ink pad is going to move around a lot easier. So this is a fast way to create a background if you want, but I'm actually using it as essentially my own ombre specialty paper to die cut from. Now in the main Envelope of Wonder die set, you get these dies that will allow you can create a functional envelope with this. Really easy. There's the 3 dies, and you'll just need to die cut one of them a second time to give you 4 pieces. And I'll show you how to assemble that in a moment. There's even an accent piece that you can use for the top flap of your envelope if you wanted. So there's a lot of different options for how to use your envelope. I'm actually going to use it as an element on a card, but it is a really nice size envelope because I actually ended up having to put this onto a 5x7 card because that envelope is so big. And in terms of actual measurements for the envelope itself, when it's assembled, it's 4.5 wide by about 3.25 tall. That's if you actually close the envelope, but I'm leaving it open as the design that I want to use, since this will be an element on my card. Now, the dies do put score lines in for you, but I'm using a thick cardstock, so I just reinforce those score lines. And it's really easy to do because those are 1/2-inch glue tabs. So you just need to, line it up at your 1/2-inch mark and give the score lines just a little bit of an extra scoring, just to deepen that score line and make it a little bit easier to fold, especially if you're using a thicker cardstock like I am. Now, I just started to pick and choose the elements from, at this point, I was starting to mix the dies between both the Autumn of Wonder as well as the main envelope of Wonder. And what's cool about the collection is that there's a lot of different themes that you can get as separate sets. And I might need to actually go and get some of the other themes because they're super, super cute. I went with Autumn of Wonder just because it does have so many different autumn items that I don't feel like I have. And so I went with Autumn for that reason. There's mushrooms, there's acorns, there's, pumpkin, squash, a lot of different foliage. So really, really fun. But in the collection, you can also get Halloween of Wonder and or Halloween Wonder and Christmas Wonder, and each of those, as the name would suggest, has a lot of different elements themed for those specific holidays. And then rounding out the collection, there's actually 2 different options for your sentiments. You can get the Envelope of Wonder sentiments as a set of stamps, just your regular clear stamps, or you can get Sentiments of Wonder as a set of better press plates. And that's what I opted for with this collection. Now, to assemble the actual envelope, you can do it a couple ways. So because I'm using this as an element on my card, the glue tabs, I'm actually gluing behind the main envelope piece that has that main body of the envelope and the top flap. If you were to actually create this as a functional envelope, I would recommend actually gluing this to the inside of your envelope, basically on top as opposed to behind, what I'm doing, because then the glue tabs will be hidden inside your envelope and it won't be visible from what will essentially be the front of your envelope. But I'm actually not using this as a functional envelope. I'm just using it as a decorative one. And so I don't really care what the other side looks like. But in reality, what you see here with all of the array showing, that would be the back of the envelope. And so you would want the front of your envelope to look pretty if you were using it as an envelope. Then I've got a lot of those die cut elements and I'll just start to assemble them. The mushrooms are pretty cute. They come in a couple of different layering pieces. So you've got a really small one here, and I've just gone with your classic kind of mushroom colors where the cap of the mushroom has the white dots and is red capped. So the topmost layer does have those pierced holes through it to see through the layer beneath, which I cut out of white. And then you've got the largest die, which has the stem and the mushroom cap, so that you can have a foundation that you build everything else on top of and layer on top of that. And again, the mushroom caps were die cut out of that sort of reddish section of my ombre. And I like doing, creating my own ombre papers, especially for fall themed cards, because fall has that sort of transition of colors, and so it's really nice to capture that as, these ombres, because you get a little bit of, one color kind of moving into the next. And so a lot of my elements have that, green leaves turning yellow, the yellow leaves turning red. And so it's really, really fun and really easy to achieve that look by just creating your own papers. Then there's also 2 sizes of acorns, and they also have a layering component to them too, that sort of cap or the top portion of the acorn. So I've die cut those out of I think I smushed out some papers or some inks for those too. Then there are we have this squash and then a pumpkin as well. And they also have stems that you can layer on top. And in fact, actually the pumpkin has 2 different variations of stems. So you can layer one up that just has that, it just matches the stem portion. But then there's a second option that has sort of the stem plus like a little bit of that curlicue, kind of the vine that it's attached to. So I thought that was cool. It's kind of nice that we have a couple different options there. Then now to start my card. So I've got this panel that I've actually embossed with, it actually is a embossing folder of the month from last year. I think it was September 2022. And it was the embossing folder club for that month. But it works out perfectly because there are a lot of, I wouldn't say they're exactly the same shapes, but very similar foliage and flowers. And I was just looking for something a little subtle for that background. Now these little pieces here, they're actually little pop-up mechanisms, and they are part of the original or the main Envelope of Wonder set. So on the single die plate, you have 2 sizes of these pop-up mechanisms. Plus there's also a 3rd die cut on that plate, which is a bit of faux ribbon for your tag if you wanted to use it. And these pop-up mechanisms are really easy. All the score lines are put in there, and all you need to do is just overlap the 2 ends and glue them together. I like to make sure when I'm gluing them together that I fold it down completely flat, because these are designed so that you can fold down your card flat, but then have whatever is attached to these pop-up mechanisms actually kind of spring up a little bit and have a little bit of dimension on your card. It's a really clever idea, because I've never thought to put a pop-up mechanism on the front of my card. I've always done it in the inside of the card when you open it, but it is kind of fun to put it on the outside, and it has the added benefit of actually being able to fold down flat and still have dimension to it. So if you were worried about a card getting too thick and using too much foam, for example, this is a great alternative, because everything can still collapse down flat and still ship nice and flat. But then when it opens, it will still sort of pop up. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Something that I never considered doing, but now that I have this set, I'll be definitely thinking to do it more. The pop-up mechanism is really easy to use. So along one of those long edges, I just glue that to the back of the element that I want to be dimensional, that I want to pop up. And then I just glue the opposite side of that long section, and that gets glued down to the front of my card. The 2 shorter sections, you want to make sure there's no adhesive there, because that is going to be what allows this piece to fold down flat. And so you want to be able to still kind of move your whatever you have popped up. You want to be able to still move that up and down and have that fold down completely flat. So anytime I glue something, especially something near one of those pop-ups, I always kind of give a little tug of these three pumpkins, because those are the three elements that I'm having pop up. I always tug them a little bit just to make sure they can still move, because I don't want to accidentally glue something down that's going to prevent it from moving, or prevent it from folding down completely flat. And so I'll get these three pumpkins on attached to my envelope here and positioned where I want. And then I can start to really have fun and fill this envelope up with all of the other elements that I have die cut. So this is where it's kind of nice to just have a lot of different elements to play with, because I never know, going into making a card like this exactly where I want everything. I just have a loose idea for what I'm going for, and then I just try to have enough die cut elements to be able to fill it out and really make it look like the envelope is just bursting with all of these sort of fall foliage. I'm adding some of the leaves right. I'm actually gluing it to the envelope, and I'm not putting glue behind it. And part of why I've added those little leaves to the front of the envelope is so that the edge of the envelope doesn't create a little catch point, and that way the pumpkins can kind of collapse down flat and pop up smoothly, and they're not going to get snagged or caught on anything. So now comes the fun part of, now that I consider those three pumpkins to be sort of my main focal point in terms of what's coming out of the envelope. So then it's all about just adding some additional foliage and elements surrounding it to really help to fill it out. I do like having a couple of these pops of red and pink of the flowers and the mushrooms. So red being a color that is so kind of eye-catching, I do want to make sure that I'm using it in a bit of a strategic way, so that wherever there are pops of red, it is just helping you to kind of move your eyes around the card. And so I don't want to cluster too much red in any one place. I just want little pops of red here and there, and I want it to kind of have your eyes move from one portion of the card to the next. And so that's why I added this little cluster down here with some of the mushrooms. And then I'm actually going to better press onto some of that same red cardstock that I created with my ombre. And I used a StazOn opaque white ink to better press my sentiment onto this. And so that worked out so that I can have, again, that just little bit of that exact same red that's in my mushroom caps. It's in some of my flowers, and it's going to kind of create a bit of that visual triangle of sorts. So we have something that's in the bottom left corner, the sentiment in the bottom right corner is in red, and then I have a few elements of red in the envelope towards the kind of the middle top. So it's subtle, but it's nice to have that bit of red just to kind of catch your eye, especially against the blue. I think these colors work really nicely together. And as well, I wanted to just continue to add. I actually had so many leaves and so much foliage that I really wanted to use as much of it as possible. So I just kept finding areas to tuck them in here and there. And it's really fun, this whole collection. I feel like I need to go back and get the Halloween and the Christmas add-ons to this as well, because I think that would be really, really fun. But you can really stuff this envelope with any items that you might already have in your stash. So it's such a nice size, and I feel like it's very kind of accommodating to a lot of different die sets that are whatever theme that you'd like. So you could put in a lot of different holiday elements for any occasion, really. So I love that. And of course, Spellbinders makes beautiful floral dies. And so I'm sure a lot of the floral collections will fit here too. So you can see how all of those pumpkins, because they're on the pop-up mechanism, they'll still fold down completely flat, and then they'll kind of spring back up and have all of that really beautiful dimension there. So really fun collection. I'm super excited, and now I kind of want to get the rest of the collection too. I hope that you enjoyed this card today. Thanks for joining me, and until next time, happy crafting and have a fabulous day. Bye!